Welcome back to the Starting Strength series. We're here with Joe Ladnier. And for those of you who didn't catch the first part, we're happy to have Joe come from Mississippi to visit with us about the 80s and powerlifting, and about his contribution to the sport back in the day, as they talk about it. The kids say the day, back in the day. What I want to talk about this time, Joe, there was a meet that you were involved in, and this meet was kind of a high point in the sport in terms of my memory of the things. The 1983 Senior Nationals in Austin. Anybody who was there. In fact, that meet was a much better meet than that year's Worlds in terms of the depth of the talent in each one of the weight classes. It was, the United States dominated the sport at the time, and that thing was quite a show. The meet itself was an amazing display. Chip McCain was the meet director, and he'd spent a bunch of money. And
oh yeah.
So let's talk about that. You were there. You were in the middle of it. I've got the pictures.
I was 19 years old. Larry had started promoting me earlier that year as the upcoming threat in the 220-pound class. And because of that, Jim Cash, being the reigning world champion and the former national champion, or the current national champion rather, he moved to Ohio and started training with us. Mm-hmm. And I think he was trying to find out more about me, basically, and seeing what I was doing. I competed in the 83 YMCA Nationals that year, January of that year, and that's when I really made my first appearance on the scene up there. And the next meet, I believe, was the Dayton Open, and I squatted my first 800-pound squat, or right over 800-pound squat. And Larry really started pushing in the magazines that I was the next threat in the 220s. So it was building up to the Senior Nationals. There was a lot of animosity between me and Jim.
Tension.
And a lot of tension. Mm-hmm. And which I love competition. I mm-hmm. thrive on competition, and I was really pumped up about the meet. And
well, the meet itself was an interesting situation. They had really spent a lot of money on the venue, and they'd rented this great big giant convention center in Austin.
It was absolutely fabulous.
It was a beautiful place. The meet was the stage was enormous. The auditorium was enormous. No expense had been spared backstage. The warm-up room was one of the most amazing places you've ever seen. And the depth of each one of those weight classes, the finest lifters in the world at the time were Americans, and they were all at the meet.
Yep.
And in the 220s, you and Hatfield and Jim Cash, and who else was there?
Mark Dimmoduck.
Dimmoduck was there. All of these names that you'd know, and it was just an amazing group of lifters. And I was there that year to take my referee's exam under Lyle Schwartz at that meet, and was at a table behind the announcer's table watching all the lifts for most of these sessions. And we were examined. We had to agree with the judges more than 80% of the time, or something like that. That's
right.
Back when they actually determined whether you were a referee on the basis of whether you were comparing to actual referees that were working at the time.
Right.
And it was quite a meet. Chip McCain had put the meet on, and one of the hilarious things, and lifted in the meet himself at 198.
Yeah.
And Chip McCain was an amazing lifter. He was an amazing businessman. He was entrepreneur from the word go, and Chip had decided that he was going to bump the gate up at this meet by having Lou Ferrigno come and pose. And Ferrigno was going to pose at, he actually put on his little posing exhibition between the two 75s and the Supers, if I remember correctly, on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
And, oh God, the place is full of kids wanting to see
the Hulk.
Lou, because he'd been in the Hulk and everything. And the actual posing exhibition was an amazing embarrassment for everybody that could see what the hell was going on, because Lou showed up weighing about 240. It's out of shape.
Out of shape.
Smooth, out of shape, hadn't even shaved.
Wasn't shaved down.
And
what pissed us off was that he, when he came backstage to where our warm-up area was, he totally made them move everything so he could warm up alone by himself.
By himself.
He didn't want to be bothered with powerlifting.
No. They weren't famous television stars like Lou. And it was amazing.
He came out for a minute and a half.
If that long.
He came out for
that long. He did like a 90-second deal.
Yep.
And then all the little kids in the auditorium went nuts. And then he came back out and did an encore for 20 seconds. And Chip got up with the mic and talked to him a minute. Yep. And that was it.
And that was
it. And they'd paid him $5,000 plus expenses to do this grand total of 2 minutes worth of shit at this meet.
Yeah.
And I was standing backstage. I remember very clearly I was standing right next to Bill Kazmaier at the stage, and Bill was looking at the floor and just shaking his head, and I said, this is an amazing waste of money, isn't it? And he said, yeah, this is money that could have much better been spent paying the returning champions way to this meet. And everybody was pissed about that backstage, but it run the gate up, and the meet was a show. Yeah. It was a show anyway, and the whole thing was just a fascinating example of the way a meet could be promoted.
Right.
Back when people were doing those things. McCain was really competing with Pacifico in terms of his meet.
Absolutely.
And it was a show. It was quite a
The
deal.
82 seniors was an amazing meet. Larry was the meet promoter in Dayton, Ohio.
Yeah.
And then again in 84, he was a meet promoter.
Yeah, he put on a hell. And Chip was trying to outdo Larry. And damn near got it done.
Yeah.
Damn near got it done. So you guys are in the 220 pound class. There's like 9 lifters in a class.
And I was competing against Fred Hatfield, who was kind of like a mentor of mine, because at my very first contest, my very first AAU contest in 1979, Fred was there doing a squatting seminar and squatted 800 pounds in a pair of shorts, knee wraps, and a belt. And here I was at 165.
Probably weighing 181 too, right? At the time.
I don't really remember what he weighed.
He hadn't gone up to 242 at that point, had he?
I don't really remember what he weighed.
It would have been 81 or 98. It wasn't.
The main thing I remember about Fred is that he was standing there smoking a cigarette and squatting at the same time.
Yeah, Fred was interesting, wasn't he?
But here I was 4 years later competing against him at the biggest meet in the United States.
Right.
And
by extension, the world.
Yeah.
Because the 83 seniors was, again,
bigger than the world.
Much bigger, deeper, hotly contested meet than the world's in 83. And you were at both of them, so you know this. And it was that was quite a show. So the meet itself was a big event there in Austin, and it had drawn lifters from all over the country, and it drawn spectators from all over the world. And the Ferrigno debacle had drawn a bunch of non-powerlifting spectators into the audience. That hall was like a 2,500 seat auditorium
at least.
Yeah, it was huge,
and it was packed.
Huge.
They had a fire marshal at the door.
Full all weekend. It was an amazing deal. Amazing deal. Chip did a great job with that.
Yeah.
And you guys lifted Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
And Tell us about the competition. Now, there's been a lot, at the time, there's quite a bit written about this. Ken Leisner, who was at the time a writer for Powerlifting USA, probably one of the most prolific writer in the sport of powerlifting, had been writing a monthly long column for Powerlifting USA for years.
Yeah,
and
decades.
he continued to do so. And he was the one that had reported on this meet. And there was quite a bit of controversy about this, if I remember correctly. Top three guys were you and Cash and Fred Hatfield. And Jim Cash was an amazing deadlifter. He had pulled 832, I'm sorry, at 220, and was known as an enormous clutch deadlifter. Not a particularly nice guy. And I can imagine the tension backstage during this thing. Tell us about the controversy at the table. Do you remember any of that?
I was backstage most of the time. I had heard about it.
Who was handling you?
Larry.
Pacifico was
Larry
handling
Pacifico, yeah. Jan Todd told me a lot what had happened.
She was
handling Jim Cash. I really was trying to focus on the meet and not worry about other people at the time. I mean, I was only 19 years old,
Right.
I was, as far as
Jim was probably, what, 30, 32, something?
Jim was probably 19. He was probably around 35.
Right.
35, 36. And Hatfield's 21 years older than me, so Hatfield was 40.
Yeah.
Yeah. I squatted 837. Jim squatted 7-something. Hatfield squatted in the mid-8s. And then I came back and benched 523. And this was all before bench shirts. It was raw. I think Hatfield benched somewhere in the high 4s. I was ahead in subtotal. Cash, he was somewhere around the mid 4s in the bench. And then it came down to the deadlift. And I pulled a 749 deadlift for the win. Hatfield pulled somewhere around the low 7s. Anyway, he was 10 pounds below me in the end, in the total. And then Cash came out of the blue to open with what he thought, well, no, he got his opener, and then he jumped his next attempt.
He was going to do a big jump.
Yeah, he was going to jump to like 850 for the win.
And the story is that someone had gone to the table and changed his second attempt.
No, I didn't know about that.
Something to that effect. Somebody had gone to the table and changed the attempts. And it happened on second and third attempt. And it screwed him up real bad. And he was pissed. And that's where a lot of this tension had come from, apparently. And
I don't remember that. I remember
Leisner didn't say in the meet report, if he knew, he didn't say who had changed the attempts.
Yeah.
I can't imagine Jan doing something stupid like that. And it may have been Larry.
I don't know.
Knowing Larry.
I don't know.
Could have been.
I know there was a controversy with the baby powder on his legs.
There was, somebody had called that.
Larry, he came up to the bar and Larry
stopped him. It was supposed to be oil on his legs or something like that.
Yeah, Larry said he's got baby oil on his legs because he said that he was known to wear baby oil in the gym when he trained. And
as a lubricant.
Yeah, when he walked up to the platform, he was all psyched up, and they stopped him.
That was the other part of the controversy.
I remember that part.
Yeah.
And they determined it was just baby powder that was on his legs, and they let him go ahead and lift. Then he had to recycle.
He had to recycle and everything, and that he missed that attempt.
Right. And then I left. I went to the back part of the stage and was taking a shower. And Jan walked into the locker room where I was taking a shower, and she goes, "Jim's going to take it again." And I said, "Really?" "I don't care. I'm going to take a shower." I'm taking a shower, and I'm listening to the crowd, and they're like, "Ah." And then I hear the weight crash. Bam! And I hear, "Oh." I'm like, "Yes. Yes."
So the total held.
Yeah, the total held,
Yeah,
which was a
it-
men's world record at the time,
Right.
21:10. And it broke Cash's world record. He held the record with 2,099,
Right.
which that's what Fred totaled
Right.
at that meet.
So 5 kilos.
Yeah.
The the picture, they have a picture in the Powerlifting USA report of that meet of you three guys on the podium accepting the trophies.
Yeah.
And Cash is not happy.
No.
In that picture, it's real clear. It was a deal. But God, the rest of those weight classes.
When they announced us, they had the podium set up. You know, first place was the highest, second place was the next highest, third place was down here. And when I was standing on the top podium in first place, I reached over to shake Fred's hand, and he turned around and picked me up and hugged me. You know, this was the highest he had ever placed at a senior national meet
Right.
in all his years of competing. He was happy. He was ecstatic.
Yeah.
And then I turned to shake Jim Cash's hand, and Jim wouldn't even look at me. He turned away. He wouldn't even shake my hand.
And I believe that's the picture.
And that's the picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was irritated
Yeah.
about that whole thing. I'm quite sure he probably thought that Larry had engineered this whole thing. And he may have.
I don't know.
Who knows?
I don't know.
You're a 19-year-old kid.
he-
Probably, how many meets had you been to at the time?
A bunch.
So you had quite a bit of meet experience.
Oh, yeah. My first year, I competed in over a dozen meets. My first year competition. It was nothing for us to go to a meet back to back. You know, we would
Right.
lift in a meet, and we wouldn't train all week, and we'd go to another meet the very next weekend. I can remember doing that 3 and 4 times in a row. You know, lifting in 4 meets in 1 month.
Just using them for heavy workouts, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. So by the time I got to the senior nationals, I had probably competed in I would say 35, 40 meets.
That's a lot of experience. That's, more than
Yeah.
a lot of people ever lived in their whole life.
Yeah. Because I know by 86, when I had my first reconstructive knee surgery, I donated over 80 trophies to the Muscular Dystrophy Foundation.
Right. Oh, God.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, the rest of that meet, do you remember, did you watch any of the rest of it?
I don't recall any of the rest of the meet. All I recall is after the meet, me and Larry were in the room getting ready to leave, and I remember seeing Larry in the mirror doing this, and I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Getting ready to rumble." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, We're gonna fight Cash." And I said, "What?"
You didn't want to do that, I don't think.
I said, "I just beat him on the platform.
That
What
would not
fighting
have,
got to do
that
with
would
it?"
not have been productive, man. Oh, God.
But that never happened, of
I've heard
course.
some stories about Jim. I'd like to talk to Jim, but God, he had a reputation back then
Yeah, he
of
did.
being a fractious,
I remember
ornery guy.
when I competed in the Dayton Open, I remember being on stage and him being in the very back of the audience. And when I pulled my last deadlift, it was the winning deadlift. I put the weight down, I looked at him, and I said, "I want you." And I shouted it across the auditorium.
Oh, that's cool. What did he do?
He just shook his
He
head.
shook his head. "You'll have me, boy."
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, God. So the 75s, I remember real clearly watching the 242s. That 242s, 275s were an amazing display of strength. There were like 12 people in the 242s at that meet, and the spread between first and fifth place was 35 kilos.
Yeah.
Something, it was just
Minute.
just tight competition, that kind of depth. I mean, at the time, the United States was by far the most dominant power in powerlifting all over the world.
Oh, yeah.
And I guess the Brits were right behind us at the time, but the Europeans hadn't gotten into it yet. And you know that nowadays their federations are so much bigger, but at the time we were handling the biggest weights, we had the biggest meets, we drew the biggest crowds, and
that was the meat of all meats.
That 83 seniors was an amazing display of the depth of U.S. talent in powerlifting.
From the 114 zone up.
It was quite a show. Quite a show. I was sitting there for the whole thing. A lot of it is gone in my memory now. It's been so damn long. It's been 31 years.
Yeah.
And I just remember little parts of it. But I remember watching you guys lift. I remember the Gamble at the time was in the 75s, wasn't he? John Gamble.
Yeah, matter of fact, I think that was the meat he had to lose like 20 pounds to get back down to the
I remember something about that. I remember hearing something about that.
He was training at over 300 pounds.
Yeah. And how hard he looked that day.
He looked like a bodybuilder.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. He always had great muscle balance and stuff anyway, but he really looked good that day.
Yeah.
And that was the thing. There were 30 people at that meet. 30, maybe 40 people at that meet with physiques superior to Ferrigno's.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know,
that's what was
so funny about the whole damn thing is Lou wanders out there.
The
Hulk wanders out there, and in comparison to all the powerlifters, just looks like shit.
Yeah.
You know, he just looked like shit that day, and everybody else is backstage shaking their hands.
And he's the one making the money.
He's making the money, and everybody else just lifted the weights.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was an amazing deal. Are there any other meets that stand out in your mind that would have been comparable to the spectacle of that thing? I mean, you've been to so many.
The 84 Hawaii Invitational was a really, really good meet. It was good for me. I was attempting to break Doug Furness's squat record at the time, and I think he held the record with like an 893 or something like that, and in the 242-pound class. I lifted as a light 242, or I weighed like 231, 232, and I attempted like an 897 squat, and I had such a wide stance squat. Gus had the platform built. It was probably 4 or 5 feet off the ground, elevated off the ground.
Yeah.
And when I stood up out of the rack and took my stance, I always took 2 steps, bam, bam, and by taking those wide stance, the whole platform shifted, vroom, vroom, and I dumped the weight.
Oh God!
So Gus made like 4 or 5 of his big Samoan lifters get under the stage and hold the pedestals under the stage while I squatted.
God almighty. Just to reinforce the platform.
And I took it again, and they misloaded the weight. And they had 145 too much on one side. And I squatted it, but when I stood up with it, it dumped off my back.
You'd come up a little sideways, obviously.
I did come up sideways, but when I stood up with it to walk, I went to take a step and it dumped off my back. So that they said that it was no lift. So
what would that have actually weighed?
Well, it would have been 897 plus another 45
plus 20 kilos, whatever that was.
Exactly. 942.
942, yep.
Yeah, 942. I squatted it.
And you squatted it.
But got red light.
You never got credit for that, though, did you?
No. Several I didn't get credit for. My 600-pound bench press, I just got credit for. I just recently received an email within 2 months ago saying that I was being inducted into the 600-pound raw bench press Hall of Fame, which I didn't know they had, but I asked them what they were talking about, and they said, well, didn't you bench press 600 pounds in 1986? And I said, well, yeah. They said, well, it was overlooked it's never been recorded in any record books.
Was that in a meet?
Yeah, it was in a meet. It was in the Florida State meet, Florida State Bench Press Championships. And anyway, the guy that does the scorekeeping nowadays for the magazine, the new magazine that's out that took over Powerlifting USA called Power, he's the one that found it. He found a picture in Powerlifting USA and found the meet, and it was a picture of me benching 600 pounds.
Right.
And he said, we now have proof, and we're putting it on the record books. And he said, it puts you number 5 in the world in the 242-pound class. And he said, it's a lift you did 28 years ago.
Wow.
You're just now getting credit for
Well, that's good research.
Yeah.
That's,
yeah,
I mean,
is.
that's a great job these guys are doing.
Yeah, it is.
Digging through the old records and stuff. That's good.
Because they didn't keep a good track of it back then.
No.
Obviously.
It fell through the cracks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was 2 days before that knee injury.
Oh God, when that meet, you mean?
Yeah. Well, yeah, the meet was on that Saturday. It was February 24th, 1986. And then the following Monday is whenever I blew my knee out in the gym.
Right. For those of you that are just joining us, because we talked about that in part 1.
Right.
Joe completely ruptured his right patellar tendon under a squat in 1986, and that radically changed the course of his career as a powerlifter. Complete, total knee, and devastating injury. Came back from it, suffered the same injury again, and came back from that. And we're happy to have him back in the sport.
I came back and I didn't compete at all in the 90s. I came back and I think it was the end of 99, around December of 99, and competed in the APF Southern States meet and won that meet. And that was my first meet back in 10 years. And it was really an eye-opener, especially seeing all the new gear and everything. And it got me curious and interested, and I wanted to try it out. You know, I was like a little kid in a candy store seeing all this new gear. Mm-hmm. And of course they had the monolift now, which is something was totally different. And it was you know, something different that I wanted to try to accomplish. So I tackled it and battled it, and I won the APF seniors, and I think it was 2002 in the 275s. And I fought the gear, you know, for almost 10 years. Mm-hmm. I think it was 99 whenever I finally called it quits and semi-retired. And but now I'm competing what they call raw, just knee wraps and a belt, and enjoying it.
Right. What was the Worlds like that year? Was it comparable in terms of?
To me, that was one of the worst meets I ever competed in. It was not a very enjoyable meet. It was during the time.
That was the meet where the judgment call was, where you tied Fred and lost on a quarter pound of body weight.
But it was the whole experience. It wasn't a good experience at all. It was during the Iranian crisis with the hostages, and Americans were very hated, and I mean, we had to be careful wherever we went during our stay over there in Gothenburg, Sweden. We were told not to wear any red, white, and blue or any type of USA symbols or anything when we go out in public. When we came out on stage, they spit at us, they threw stuff at us, they booed at us. I mean, it was terrible. I had a horrible time. Yeah, it was bad.
So nothing even comparable to the seniors that year.
Oh no, nothing. No.
What's the best Worlds you'd gone to?
My best, and I know it's not your best because it's outside the IPF and USAPL, but it was the WPC Worlds in 2004.
Yeah. Good meet.
It was a very good meet. It was a week long, and me and my daughter competed the same day, and she won and I won. She won that morning, and I won that evening.
Oh, that's cool. That's an interesting experience. to have with your kid.
She was 14 years old, and she won the Teenage World Championships.
How about that?
Yeah. I won the men's division.
Well, she's inherited some of her daddy's genetics, apparently.
Oh,
huh?
yeah. She only competed for 9 months, and she squatted. The most she ever squatted was 900 pounds. I mean, 900 pounds. She totaled, God, I can't remember the numbers. She squatted 400 pounds,
Right.
weighing 129
At the
14.
age of 14.
She bench pressed 203. Of course, that's with a bench shirt.
Right.
And she deadlifted 303. And those were all world records at the time, and they're still world records today.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And she has no interest in it. Matter of fact,
Just outgrew it completely.
well, on the way home from the plane trip, while we were on the plane, she told me, she said, Dad, I just did this for you. I don't have any interest in it whatsoever.
Wow. Well, that's an amazing performance for so casual an attitude. Isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
My son
yeah.
also competed. He won the teenage nationals when he was, I believe he was 13 or 14. He might have been 15. But he was competing against Gene Bell's son.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of fun because
Oh, fun in the warm-up, really,
yeah.
huh?
Well, Gene handling his son and me handling my son,
Right.
and I kind of knew Gene's strategy and what he was going to do, and he kind of knew my strategy, what I was going to do. So it was fun going back and
Oh,
forth.
yeah. I'm sure
And
it
it came
was.
down to the deadlift, and my son outpulled him and beat him. But his son now, ironically, has continued with his lifting career, and I saw a video of him recently pulling over an 800-pound deadlift
Oh, my God.
at 198.
Ooh.
Yeah, just
that's
phenomenal.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So what's your son doing? Is he,
He's just now getting into it again.
Yeah.
He
He
didn't
dropped
compete
it for
very
a while.
long. He dropped it for about 5 years. He's 21 now, and he's in the Army National Guard, and just trying to get his life, pointed in the right direction. And he's working at a refinery, and he trains with me in the evening time now. He's really the one that got me back into it
Right.
last October.
right.
But we train together now 4 days a week.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good well, it's good for a kid to have an experience like that with his father, especially when his father's done so much with it himself. Just the experience that you can pass on to him that's got to be an amazing thing to watch that take root. And,
Yeah.
And watch him do
Every
well.
number he does, every goal he sets and reaches, it's really exciting. He pulled his first 600-pound deadlift here not too long ago, and that was really exciting to watch. And then he benched his first 300-pound bench press raw, and squatted 550 raw, and I know that's not super strong, but just coming back into it,
He's doing fine.
he's doing great.
He's doing a great job.
Yeah.
Well, and you're doing a great job as a coach.
Thank you.
That's an excellent legacy you're building there.
Thank you.
We're going to talk more in the third part of this, and we're going to ask Joe to. I'm just going to give him a list of names, and we're going to see Joe's reaction to the people that he knew in the sport back in the '80s. And we'd like for you guys to come back with us in the third part of our little visit with Joe Ladnier here on the Starting Strength series.